Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast here with Jessica Bun Bun. This is our Only Murders in the Building Season 4, Episode 3 reaction and review. Hello to all of you perfect strangers that are out there
Oh.
watching this. Now, see, I spent at least 30 minutes yesterday trying to come up with some sort of like a larger connection with perfect strangers, and it's like, oh, is this connected somehow to the
You
killer?
really did.
What I ended up coming up with here is one, I think they probably just like the song. Two, they probably got clearance for it. And three, it made for a good representation of Oliver and Zach Galifianakis. I don't know if there's anything else there, but I still very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, it feels like somebody's a fan. You know what I mean? Like we got that whole reenactment of the two of them going around town and being perfect strangers, but we did hear it later on through that ham radio. So, I mean, we're going to get into a lot of that. We're not going to get into everything about the ham radio
Yeah.
because we do have a theory video that goes much, much deeper into the ham radio that will be coming up on Wednesday. So make sure you hit that subscribe button because we have Only Murders in the Building content 3 times a week here at the channel, and you don't want to miss it. We're also covering Slow Horses, and this week, the old man is coming back to FX. We love this show. It's
Yeah.
so great, starring Jeff Bridges and John Lithgow. So if you're looking for more thrillers out there, those two are really great shows.
Also, be sure to join our Patreon for just $5 a month. You guys can help support us to make all these videos that we really love to make for you guys. You also have the option to vote in polls, and we are exclusively covering The Penguin over at our Patreon when it premieres. So thank you to everyone who has supported us over there. It means a whole lot.
Okay, so like I mentioned, we're not going to get too deep into the ham radio of it all, but I am going to say that this episode has made me feel like the show is like just messing around with me because episode 1, I felt like Saz could have been the target. Episode 2, I was like, Charles is the target, and they really pushed that narrative.
Yeah.
Now in episode 3, I'm like, they're both the target. And that we have Saz, who was poking around and she found out and she just got too close to everything, that there is some sort of secret from Charles's past. I think we've both said that this feels very much like the motive of the killer, that there's a secret from Charles's past that they do not want out there. And that by having Charles doing this movie, that it could possibly come out. And Saz figured out that secret and she got. And now they're continuing to poke around, and they've had this warning on this ham radio. Now, this person on the radio was very much like, these are the quotes: you shouldn't be on this frequency. The last person that came around asking these questions got killed. Drop this or you're next. Now, the drop this or you're next makes me feel one of two things. So either if this is the killer, you know, maybe they got rid of Saz because Saz was poking around. That's what they said. They asked too many questions. They got too close to the truth and they got themselves killed. And they're basically, if you take it for truth, that if you keep doing this, you'll also get got, means that Charles wasn't necessarily the target, but he's gonna be if he keeps poking around. So the person on the radio is either the killer warning them to back off or they'll get killed next, which would mean that Charles wasn't on the list, but he's going to be. Or if the person is not the killer, then the person is warning them that Saz was snooping around and she got killed and Charles, you know, was not the target.
I'm going to get pretty weird for the next couple of minutes, so I advise everyone to just bear with me while I try to sort through my thoughts, because this is all very confusing to me on a number of different levels. Like, you are correct in your assertion that they seem to want to play around with us on who the actual target is for all of this.
I just feel like if Charles was the target, then we wouldn't have had somebody on the radio, if we're taking them for truth, being like, hey, if you back off and you stop snooping around, you will be okay. If Charles was the target, he would still be the target.
I'm just not sure if I'm taking this person for truth. Mostly
Right?
just because of the fact that, okay, clearly, if we are to believe that perhaps this person on the other line is Dudenoff, or this person on the other line is the actual person who killed Saz, it's just this situation. It's like, okay, well, you're capable of killing someone. You're more than capable of lying in this moment. And I sort of think that there is this possibility that, oh, oops, we got rid of Saz. We're not going to be able to, take out Charles, our actual target, in this immediate moment. So what can we do? Oh, maybe we will warn him with our ominous, strange-sounding voice that sounds like Tali from Mass Effect. Yes, I am putting references into this video that no one other than me will understand. That happens every now and then. It's one for me, guys. But Tali from Mass Effect on the other line is just sort of like, stay away. And it's this, I can't tell if her voice has been like put through a modulator or that's like actually close to her voice or not. I mean, maybe that's a clue to as to who the killer or the nefarious person is. It's just that at the end of the day, I'm just sitting here being like, okay, how much of this should I really believe at all? Like, I'm just not sure. I just don't know if this is something that is a legitimate warning or if it is just like, okay, let's stall it out. We're going to have another chance at Charles. We just can't take it right now because he's got more precautions going on.
Here's the thing about the ham radio. And like I said, we're going to have a much deeper discussion about it. But last season 3, episode 5, Saz said to Charles, are we sure the killer was after Ben and not you, Charles? Because she's been getting vibes, because there's been chatter on her ham radio of people wishing it was Charles instead of Ben. So, I mean, there's been set up since mid last season that this could be Charles, but I just don't know now that we've heard from the person on the other end. We don't know who this person is. They could be the killer. They could be not the killer. They could be somebody else trying to give them a warning so that they don't get themselves killed. But the biggest question with this radio is, who's Dudenoff? Who is Dudenoff? It is in the Dudenoff apartment. We know now that Mabel is like, I'm just going to live here now. And eventually Dudenoff is going to have to show up and deal with me. But that place looks like it hasn't been lived in a long time. And I've been kind of wondering if Dudenoff is dead.
I do love, like you said, how Mabel is basically now Ole Munk from this past season of Fargo.
I know, yeah.
It's just like, I live here now.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting twist to all of this. Now, speaking of interesting twists, I've got a theory on Dudenoff that I am basically taking. This feels like something that would happen on the Blacklist, and maybe that's because
let's get on our tinfoil hat.
I love the Blacklist. I miss the Blacklist. If Dexter Morgan can come back, Reddington, you can come back too. The Blacklist Resurrection coming next year. No, I really feel like Dudenoff may not be a person. I feel like Dudenoff may actually just be an organization. Because we've seen this in all different sorts of ways where you have something that kind of sounds like it's a person, but it's not really. This is just kind of a code word because Dudenoff, it sounds just so abstract when you really think about it. And also, if you're trying to use this as a code word here, like let's say that Dudenoff is a group that you're hiring to take people out, it feels like it benefits you greatly to have this be an organization rather than a person, because a person can be easily tracked down. And if you're like going through the phone books and you're like looking up all the Dudenoffs, you may just find some random people who have nothing to do with it, who may just be like, I don't know, baking croissants in their oven or something. Like, it feels just much more protective of whatever it is they're trying to do.
Now, they have said that Dudenoff was a professor, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't a professor of crime, and that and that there is a lot more people that are part of this, because it does to us look like this was a hired hit. And I mean, going back and looking at the person who was in the window and what they were wearing and that they had their nails done, like it could be a woman, and we could have 4 seasons of female killers and change the name of the show to Women Who Kill. But I mean, really, even if they're the person that actually pulled the trigger, that doesn't really mean necessarily that they're the killer and they are the entire person behind it. I really think somebody has been hired, maybe from the Dudenoff organization or from the Dudenoff family, who could be an organization. You know what? If you guys catch my drift. Or it could be a relative of Dudenoff where Charles wronged them in some sort of way and the relative is taking some sort of revenge. It feels like this season the theme is revenge.
That feels 100% the case here. And I'll try to build a very elaborate house of cards here that's probably going to blow down with what I think is actually going on. Because I think that Dudenoff is an organization. I think that the person who's really responsible for everything, the big bad, if you will, I think I said this in the episode 2 review, that it might be a relative of someone who was really, really wronged by Charles, who may be behind all of this, and that they somehow caught wind of this Dudenoff organization. They didn't want to do anything themselves because it's too risky, it's too dangerous. Whoever clearly committed this act against Saz, they had a lot of accuracy training here, if you catch my drift. So they hire somebody from the Dudenoff organization to make this happen. The person who they heard on the ham radio at the end of this episode, that might not have been the killer per se, but rather just somebody else from the organization. Maybe they don't know the full story. Maybe they've just been told by the boss, Big Boss Dudenoff, you cannot give specifics. You must clear everyone off the path. But here's the thing with Only Murders. They love to make things as difficult as humanly possible for the trio. And I kind of feel like, especially because we heard that voice, we're going to figure out who shot Saz pretty quickly. Like, I think we're going to learn this in the next couple of episodes. But what I think is going to happen is we're going to learn who this person is, and then that person's going to get killed before they're able to give any information about who hired them. And with that in mind, the next part of this season then becomes like, okay, we got to figure out who hired the killer, because that's really the person responsible here.
I was really surprised that Mabel gave up who they were on the radio. Who was like, it's OMITB, paging perfect strangers. I'm like, why would you give away who you are? Like, everybody who's anybody's listening to this podcast, it's getting made into a movie. So it's got to be fairly popular if it's being picked up by a major studio with Eugene Levy, that people would know what that means at this point. I mean, even Jan was like, thanks for, season 2. I found out about these secret passages because of your podcast, that these people wouldn't be able to figure out who is on the radio with them. And they were easily able to figure it out and be like, hey guys, you need to back off. I wonder if your organization thing is true, your theory is true, if maybe the person on the radio is somebody going rogue that doesn't feel like they want to be part of this anymore, and they're actually being helpful and trying to warn them off, to just be like, guys, you need to stop snooping around. Saz snooped around too much. She's dead now. Stop it, and everything might be okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being the case, because I gotta feel like this line of work is not for everybody, guys. Taking out people left and right. Maybe they did it once and they're like, whoa. I didn't know it would feel like this at the end of it. By the way, though, you're totally right about Mabel in that moment. Why are you telling these people on the other line who you are? The only way you can get away with doing something like this is that if you're actually going to intimidate someone. Nobody's going to be afraid of the trio. If you go on and you're like, this is Lord Vader, I mean, maybe they'll be afraid at that point, but not Charles and Oliver, who can barely sometimes get up and down the elevator. I mean, yes, they have solved cases, but I'm still not entirely sure how.
Okay, so we saw Detective Williams back, who is, I'm now convinced, the funniest person on earth. Her comedic timing is so perfect. She is so funny. Okay, so she has now said, the FBI's on the case. The shooter was really proficient, one single casing, one shot, and that the gun was a hunter's gun. So that further confirms to me this person was hired.
Yeah.
It would be too much of a coincidence for it to be like, I'm gonna kill Saz, and I just happen to be like the best shooter on the planet, right? Anything is possible, but I think that they were hired. So FBI thinks that Jan hired the shooter. Williams doesn't. I also do not think that after we saw her in episode 2. I know she lies about a lot of stuff, but I don't think she's lying about this because we've seen how she kills. And this is not how it works for her. And I know that if she was really desperate and she was in jail and she couldn't kill herself, that maybe she would hire somebody, but I just don't think she would. I think she would do what she did, find a way out, and then deal with it herself. So Williams also said Dudenoff is a retired professor. The neighbors are saying he's not in town and he's in Portugal. Is he in Portugal? I don't know. Maybe. I think he's dead, but that's just me. The tenants are also saying that they heard the gunshot, except for Christmas Bro, who wasn't home.
Yeah.
And that's the information that we've gotten through that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of important little nuggets to remember here, mostly in that the Westies are doing their best to sort of be like...
The Westies are doing their bestie. I had to say it. Oh, my God.
Okay, see the...
Please subscribe.
Yes, hit that subscribe button if you love references to obscure video game characters and Westie bestie jokes. We appreciate it greatly. Now, the Westie besties here, they're in a position that they want to act like, we know what's going on while at the same time covering up what's really going on. It makes sense for them to be like, okay, we heard the shot. It makes sense for them to also still continue to cover up the fact that they have probably, in my view, been paid off so that they don't actually say anything about what's going on at the Dudenoff apartment. They might be doing it reluctantly on some level. I mean, we saw that photo with the face crossed off, so it's not like everybody's BFFs anymore, but are you really going to say no to money in return for, your silence when you're renting an apartment in New York City, which is insanely expensive?
Yeah, that picture in Vince's place with the face crossed out with the person that's holding the pig that was in Dudenoff's apartment, it just makes me feel more and more and more like Dudenoff is dead. And whether they killed Dudenoff or they found him and was like, hey guys, what if we all cover this up together and then we can all use this apartment and we'll just keep paying for it together, and this could be like our nefarious apartment where we do whatever we want in here. Something's really weird.
It feels a lot like one of these sort of situations where somebody approaches you and, maybe it's at a bar, maybe it's at an aquarium. I don't know where people meet each other anymore, but they're like, hey, you want to be friends? And it's like, oh, sure, this person seems really nice. You hang out with them for a week and then you watch them kill somebody. And then you're like, oh, whoa. I don't know if I want this anymore. But you're already in too deep with them. You already know who they are. And so the payoffs are a way in which to facilitate this. And if the Dudenoff that these people met was just sort of a part of a larger Dudenoff organization, these Westie besties may have then just sort of been like, okay, well, we can't really do anything about this because what, are we going to go against this whole organization? We will just sit down, we will shut up, we will take your money, just don't come around here anymore. I'm going to Sharpie your face, I'm going to pretend like you do not exist.
Okay, so we have to get into the trio having the trio of actors following them around.
Yes.
I had thought that this was probably something that was contracted because why would they allow that to happen? Like Oliver, of course, he's always kind of starstruck and wants to have these grand stories to be able to tell. But Charles is a really solitary person, and so is Mabel, that I figured they would both be like, I'm not interested. And that was the case. However, it wasn't contracted. They were just able to convince Charles that this would be a great idea because for whatever reason, Eugene Levy is just gassing him up at every single turn. He is whatever, a Brazos fan. I don't know what is going on with Eugene Levy.
Okay, I'm gonna rank these three trio storylines here, and I hate to say it, but Eugene Levy's probably my least favorite, and it's not because Eugene Levy isn't some sort of treasure in two separate countries, because he is. I love him, but the gassing up Charles was fun at first. It just feels like Charles and Eugene Levy are a little too similar as characters, so their whole scene with Vince, where they're doing the whole lottery enactment and all of that, it did drag, like just like a tiny bit for me. I think that part of it could have been sped up a little bit.
It dragged a lot for me. There was parts of it that I really liked and I enjoyed at the beginning of it, but by the time they were like, we're going to do Eugene's plan where you drink the water and you drink the water, I was like, oh my God, this is really going on a long time. Guys, you need to land the plane.
Okay, number 2 here. This was a close race between number 2 and number 1 for me. Number 2 is Zach Galifianakis, because I love everything he brought to this episode. I love his initial refusal to go along with what Oliver wanted to do. I love him sort of coming to this realization, oh, you don't want to be forgotten, which is the one thing clearly that he and Oliver have in common. Zach wants to be treated as a serious actor and wants to play all this sort of stuff. So he really got into the character. I loved the Perfect Stranger stuff. Like, theories aside, I just love a good late 80s, early 90s television theme song. I mean, The Only Murders one's pretty good, but where have we gone in this world without these great theme songs? This montage just made me laugh so hard.
Hawaii Five-0 is the best theme song ever. I said what I said.
Really?
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Okay, well, what's yours?
The Leftovers season 2.
Okay, stop. Oh my God.
The Leftovers, speaking of Perfect Strangers, that also ironically has a role in The Leftovers, but that is the weirdest journey of a show of all time. Season 1, not great. Season 2, phenomenal. Season 3, I don't know what they were on when they made it. But
I have to say that I really loved the moment with Howard, who came out and was really there for Oliver the way that he was. And I know he wasn't able to really kind of get it out in the nicest way, but I understand what he was trying to say. I know there's a lot of people out there that think that Howard's this huge mastermind and he has been behind this the whole time and he is this Moriarty, villainous character behind it all. But I really think he cares about this building a lot. And I think he cares a lot about the people in the building. I think this building is Howard's everything. So I just have a hard time believing that he would do anything that would hurt his building or hurt anybody in his building, because I think these are the only people he has in his life. After hearing that speech, I was like, this guy's whole life is the building.
He's just that guy who doesn't have a whole lot going on, doesn't really know what his purpose is. And I think that's played really, really well on the show, to the point where Howard seems to have adopted every single pet under the sun at a various point. He's got the pig, he's got Gravy the dog, he's not allowed to have any more cats. It just feels like he's that guy who just wants to come across as good and helpful. Like, I'll talk a little bit more about him in the ham radio video. It just feels like he's a kind, gentle soul, and if he turns out to be a villain, my jaw will be so far on the floor that I will never be able to pick it up again.
Yeah, they'll have to really convince me that he's really an evildoer the way that people really think that he is. I know he's an odd duck, but he's all of our odd duck. Like, I think he's harmless. Let's talk about Eva Longoria, who I've said before, I've never seen her before. This, she is so funny. She is number one in this for sort of like comedy. Oh my God, grabbing that rifle off the wall was like, we got to speed this up, I have a dinner, was one of the funniest things I've seen this season. She is just firing on all cylinders. She is so funny.
She was just completely unhinged through the entirety of this episode. And I got to think she had the time of her life with this writing of just going in here and being sort of the anti-Mabel, who of course wants to make Mabel into her own character, despite whatever, our Mabel, the Selena Gomez Mabel, thinks. And then they go and they visit Mr. Christmas All the Time guy, which it also, it helps all of this to have, another established comedian in Kumail who's sort of thrown into this, who, he told this story on Jimmy Kimmel that, he is a person, he moved to America for college and he had never really celebrated Christmas before. So he kind of relates to Christmas all the time guy in that way. But to see sort of her challenge him and her actually be useful to the case, much to Mabel's own surprise, it was pretty fun. But, I think it's fair to also still have a lot of questions about Christmas guy. Why do you have that ham radio that's so obviously there? Why is it being played? It seems as though you're not responsible for any of this, but is this whole I hate Christmas a lie? And is this a lie on top of a lie?
I feel that that's true.
I think probably.
Oh my goodness, when he revealed that he's like, I had this one viral video about a Christmas workout, and now this is my life. That's absolutely how it works.
Yeah.
I mean, we see influencers all the time do one thing. I saw this one influencer forever ago who made a ridiculous ice cream sandwich where they cut like this huge piece of ice cream and put it in between two cookies, and people lost their minds. They were so mad about it that she ended up getting millions of views and was like, oh, you guys don't like this content? Cool. Look at me making an ice cream sandwich with an entire bucket of ice cream now. Like, it just went on, and now she's the ice cream all the time person, right? That's kind of how it works. So I saw that. I was dying. I was laughing. But we have to talk about the tinsel. So
yeah.
He doesn't have any tinsel in his place because it's a fire hazard, which I think is probably why you can't really, I mean, you can get tinsel, but people don't really tinsel anymore the way that they did. And that was what he was saying. He was like, oh, this thing that you have doesn't burn, and tinsel is a fire hazard. So, I don't have it in here. And that's not what this is. I Googled anything that this could possibly be. Like, I did quite the deep dive, and the only thing I was able to come up with something that looks like tinsel but isn't tinsel, because it's not tinfoil. Like, it looks like tinsel but it's thicker, is that it might be either those handlebar things that are on children's bicycles, but I don't know how that would come into play.
Yeah.
Or it would be a hair extension. I saw so many videos of these hair extension tinsel things that are in people's hair that it's such a thing. It's like a 90s hair wrap, except it's tinsel. I went back. I went through like the brothers, sisters, everyone who was at that meeting. Does anybody have a hair wrap like that? No. So that's my best guess at this point as a theory, that it is a hair wrap? Question mark.
I think you're right. I tried to think about this too, and instead of doing the smart thing, which was going on Google, I just used Brain Google, which came up with some really bad ideas, including that it is a pipe cleaner. I think I thought at one point it says some sort of cord, and it is clearly neither of those things. The hair extension makes sense because I've seen this before. I've seen people who have like these little tinsel-y things just sort of dangling in their hair, which always leads to me wondering, like, how do you wash that? How do you maintain that? But that's, as a bald man, I don't really have much understanding of any of those things. But I do wonder now that, okay, it may not be the brothers, sisters, or anybody else that we've met if this person is just someone who is hired to commit this act.
Right.
Now, as you pointed out earlier, we did see in the trailer that tiny glimpse of somebody on the window who seemed like, it could be a woman. There was a pretty slender frame. I mean, nothing.
They had their nails done, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a woman. And we didn't see their hair at all.
Yeah.
Like, it was just a tiny, tiny piece of a jaw, like so tiny.
I think there's still a lot of things that need to be worked out here about Dudenoff. I mean, whether it be the tinsel or whatever it is, but then also the pig. Like, we still don't have confirmation that that pig is property of the Sauce family or any way, shape, or form. And it was the mystery Dudenoff person that was holding the pig in that picture. And I bring this up mostly just because as somebody who has had animals a lot in my life in various shapes or forms, a lot of animals, and I'm not experienced with pigs, but a lot of animals, you can't pick them up unless that animal trusts you. So that makes me feel like, okay, Dudenoff has been around this pig on a reasonable number of occasions to be able to hold that pig for long enough that a picture is being taken.
Speaking of animals, shout out to Coco Chanel Vanderwoof.
Yeah.
She turned 15 yesterday, which is, pretty
Aw.
amazing that she's done as well as she has. So sweet little dog, we love you.
We love you so much. You are the best. No, I really do think this was a fun episode. I
Mhm.
think it introduced some new characters. It has us clearly thinking a lot about, who may have been hired for this, who Dudenoff is, my larger organization. If this is the case, we better get to see some of this organization soon. I'm
Mhm.
still, since I haven't really mentioned in this video, I'm still not backing off the idea that, okay, it's the killer is somebody who's working on this film to some degree. I still
Mhm.
think it is one of those lesser people that we have not really seen or heard much about from the premiere. We know how this show works. We'll probably meet more of them as time goes on and the movie actually starts to get into production.
Scott Bakula, what were you doing at that movie party? You're not part of the movie, or are you? You have the money to hire somebody. I'm still looking at you.
I think it's fair to still be looking at him. I think this
This
season,
show loves to like
yeah,
introduce somebody really early on, and then you don't really see them and you kind of forget, and then they take you on a red herring journey for like 5 or 6 episodes, and then they reintroduce that person.
yeah, that's the thing. This is a really unique season too, in that it really feels like they are intentionally leaving as many people on the table as possible, to the
Mhm.
point that we are still sitting around being confused about who the actual target here is. And it could easily still be Saz through the lens of people knew that Saz was actually back at the Arconia
Mhm.
at that time, and if they wanted to take her out, like, I still have a hard time understanding how they would be able to see them from that distance, but if they're trained in this art, they're probably able to. Not everybody is legally blind like me.
Oh,
See,
you can
listen,
take that
I
shot.
can't take that shot. Even if I had perfect vision, I could not take that shot. I played GoldenEye a lot when I was much younger. I still play a little bit of Borderlands. I am never good as the sniper character, guys. I'm just give me like I don't know, the big thing, and I'll just run and be like
I
all
know
over
you're
the
always
place.
the berserker.
I always die all the time in those games. I'm just throwing that out there. But that's what we got here on Only Murders in the Building, Season 4, Episode 3. Thank you guys, as always, for being sleuths along with us. Hit that subscribe button for our preview,
Mhm.
and then also our theory about the ham radio. And you
Yep.
can support us further by joining our Patreon. Link is in the description. For just $5 a month, you help us to be able to keep making these videos. Thank you to our patrons. We'll see you here next time.